The date was July 5th, 1943, 0400 hours. Private Dmitri Volkov huddled deeper into his trench, the pre-dawn chill seeping into his bones despite the summer heat. A gnawing fear twisted in his gut, a cold knot that tightened with each passing moment. He was barely 19, a farm boy from a village now lost somewhere behind the German lines. He clutched his Mosin-Nagant rifle, the cold steel a small comfort in the face of the unknown. Around him, his comrades stirred, a symphony of coughs, whispers, and the clinking of equipment. They were waiting. Everyone knew what was coming. Rumors had been circling for months of a new, terrible German counteroffensive. The political officers tell us that we are winning the war. Not in that moment. The dread caused a twist in his stomach. Dmitri was tasked with watching the wheat field in front of them. The wheat, once golden and promising, now stood tall and ominously silent, swaying gently in the breeze like a deceptive invitation. It was a deceptively peaceful scene, hiding the storm about to break. He longed for the familiar scent of earth and grain of his home, for the warmth of the morning sun on his face without the shadow of fear. Suddenly, the world exploded. It started as a low shriek and increased its pitch as the shells entered their downward arc towards the Soviet lines. The earth bucked and heaved as the German artillery opened up on them. A deafening roar swallowed everything. A shell exploded nearby, and Dmitri was thrown against the side of the trench, the impact stealing his breath. Shells continued to scream for what seemed like eternity, each one a promise of oblivion. The wheat field disappeared in a cloud of smoke and fire, the once golden stalks now blackened and burning. He scrambled to his feet, his ears ringing, his vision blurred. The attack had begun. As the artillery barrage lifted, the rumble of engines filled the air. It started as a slow, mechanical screech, but this one was repetitive. Dmitri peered over the edge of the trench, his heart pounding in his chest. Out of the dust, a line of German tanks, Panzer IVs and assault guns, emerged from the smoke, their guns searching for targets. Behind them, waves of infantry advanced, their silhouettes distorted by the heat and smoke. "They're coming. Prepare to fire," someone screamed. Dmitri gripped his rifle, his hands slick with sweat. Fear threatened to paralyze him, but the ingrained training, the faces of his comrades, and the image of his mother's worried eyes pushed him forward. In that moment, it was just him, the dirt, and the hundreds of soldiers and heavy steel bearing down on his position. The first tank opened fire, a shell slamming into the trench a few meters to his left. Dirt and debris rained down on him. He ducked instinctively, then forced himself to look again. He had to do something. He aimed his rifle and fired into the advancing infantry, firing as quickly as he could work the bolt. He saw one fall, then another. But they kept coming, a relentless tide of gray uniforms. Bullets rained down around and in front of him. The tanks were closer now, their machine guns spitting streams of bullets that chewed up the earth and the sandbags. Dmitri knew they needed to stop the tanks. He remembered his anti-tank training, a brief and terrifying lesson on how to use a Molotov cocktail. He reached for the bottle, his hands trembling. It was a crude weapon, but it was all he had. He saw the tanks. Amid the chaos and noise of battle, it kept coming. 100 feet, 75, 50, 25, 10. Bullets and shells seemed to bounce off the behemoths. He waited until the closest tank was almost upon them, then leaped out of the trench, ignoring the hail of bullets whizzing past his head. He lit the rag, the flames licking at his fingers, and hurled the Molotov cocktail towards the tank. The bottle shattered against the hull, the burning fuel spreading quickly. Smoke billowed from the tank, and the crew scrambled out, coughing and choking. It was a small victory, but it gave them a moment's respite. The battle raged for hours. Dmitri fought with a desperate ferocity, firing his rifle, throwing grenades, and even using his entrenching tool as a weapon in the close-quarters fighting. The trench was a scene of carnage, filled with the wounded, the dying, and the dead. The air was thick with the stench of blood, smoke, and cordite. After a few hours, Dmitri was exhausted. But despite the ferocity of the German attack, the Soviet line held. When the Soviet reinforcements appeared in the distance, the Germans lost heart and began to disengage and retreat. As the sight of the fresh troops and armor got closer, the Germans, battered and bloodied, began to falter. It was late afternoon, when the last of the Germans had disengaged. "We have beaten them," said the political commissar excitedly. The attack had been repelled. The German tanks retreated, leaving behind a field of burning wreckage and fallen soldiers. The Soviet line was battered but unbroken. Dmitri slumped back into the trench, exhausted and covered in dirt and blood. He looked around at the scene of devastation, at the faces of his surviving comrades. But they had won the battle, for now. The battlefield in front of the trench was the scene of death and despair. Dead and dying Germans lay where they were hit. Some were groaning, only to be put out of their misery by a kindly bullet. As the sun set on the first day, Dmitri wondered when this would all end. He had no strength left to cook a meal, although he was terribly hungry. He simply lay down on his trench and fell into a deep sleep, waiting for the next grim day to come.